So much trade news starting to emanate around the AFL. Let's start with Carlton, where news today that Jack Silvagni will exercise his options as a free agent and depart the club. Cal, what can you tell us?
Well, he hasn't named a club yet, and he has a couple at least chasing him. Now, the Western Bulldogs have a 4-year offer on the table for him. He's met with them, done a medical. Also, Collingwood has done the same and has the same offer on the table for him. Of course, Carlton had a 4-year offer for him as well. So it's not as if he's been without options, but I think the Bulldogs are well in this race. At first, it felt like Collingwood was well ahead. The Bulldogs have made up some ground, and there's a good fit for him there. So he has a big decision to make. You'd expect that to come over the next week.
Financially, what's the difference between Carlton and what the other clubs are?
Not significant.
Okay.
Not overly
So this is about wanting another opportunity, wanting to do something different.
I think it's a bit of a fresh start to it all. Yep. And also, where's Carlton at on the ladder? You know, there's a couple of teams that could spike.
Just one club I want to put on the agenda as well with Jack Silvagni is St Kilda. So it's one of those stories that's been circling for a while, Cal. Yeah, absolutely. St Kilda.
They've just opened up the books, haven't they?
Yeah, it's less firm than what Collingwood or the Western Bulldogs are, but I just can't discount them. That's the point. Everyone I ask, they don't say no, they're out of it. In fact, I think St Kilda is just waiting in the background. I know that Jack Silvagni has a very good relationship with Ross Lyon, privately, away from football. Clearly, his dad is a list manager there as well. I agree with you, Cal. I think the Western Bulldogs and Collingwood are very much ahead, but I'm just not quite ready to draw a line through St Kilda.
Saints are already looking at Leclerc, of course, from the Giants in that regard, and we spoke about Liam Ryan as well, who we expect to go there.
More trade news in a while on the other clubs, but the biggest trade story of the year, potentially, Cal, could be Charlie Curnow, despite what he said now, not once, but twice publicly. What can you tell us tonight about the future of Carlton's spearhead?
Well, Charlie is still keen to pursue a move if the green light is there from Carlton. And we know his long-term contract, but if Carlton give it the green light to look at it and Sydney come to the table with some options, then I think there's going to be some further discussions to this. Now, at this point, there hasn't been that yet from Sydney to say this is what we'll offer, this is who is up for grabs. But for me, Charlie Curnow is definitely looking at different options.
So he's knocked it on the head twice, and I imagine he's just maybe publicly, he's slightly disgruntled. Like, senior players are allowed to be disgruntled. They're allowed to give feedback to the coaching administration if things are going wrong. That's their role. It's not just him giving feedback.
But I think it's about the environment in Melbourne, isn't it? It feels like it's not necessarily about Carlton. It's the environment in Melbourne, the pressure. I mean, playing for Carlton and performing subpar in a subpar team, I don't think it'd be a lot of fun with the supporter base they've got and how they really drill into each player. But if he's going to leave Melbourne, and talk about Sydney, talk about Gold Coast, neither of those clubs really have what Carlton want.
Well, I believe there'd be 4 untouchables at Sydney. Let's have a look at them because they're obvious. Isaac Heaney, Errol Goulden, Nick Blakey and Chad Warner. Those are the 4 guys that just aren't going to be in the conversation. And if they are, then I don't think Sydney will be part of the Charlie Curnow chase, if that's what Carlton is going to demand. But then after that, you look at the next tier. It's the James Rowbottom types, the Tom Papleys, Logan McDonald. They also have pick 9, of course, that'll be part of discussions. Is that going to be enough for a player who does want to look at his options?
Michael Voss could not let Charlie Curnow go for one of those names you've just said.
It's the age-old question. If a player isn't that keen to be there, how well can he perform next year?
I think you can turn a player around. I really do think. I mean, unless he's like absolutely walks out and says, I'm definitely not playing, but it doesn't sound like that's
he's not going to do that.
No, he's said, I'd rather go somewhere else from an environment point of view, but that point of view for me is the players you're talking about there. If I was the coach, there's no way you'd let a player like that go for the quality of play you're talking about.
What happens if Sydney had like a trade-out option, like you see in like the NBL across in the USA, Tommy? Would you be up for something like that? Where Sydney just go to a player, they go to Hurdy or they go to James Rowbottom or Chad Warner and go, or Errol Goulden, sorry mate, pack your bags, you're going to Melbourne, we're getting Charlie Curnow in.
So trade without consent?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, it doesn't exist in the AFL, but if Sydney
Can you see it ever existing?
No, I can't, not with the AFL Players Association, the way it is. And I've got mixed views on it depending on what players earn and how vast Australia is compared to America, because
it's pretty vast.
They make more money in the US.
True, I'm joking.
Understand that, yeah. The other thing with Charlie Curnow, Cal, there'll be plenty of people sitting at home just wondering how can he knock it on the head twice publicly? And we are saying the opposite. And I completely agree with you that if it was entirely up to him, he would move clubs at the end of the year. It's not. How does that work behind the scenes? What are the machinations? How do the player managers get involved to get this deal done?
Well, this is why you have managers, isn't it? And to work out what the market's saying. And if it is getting to a point where it progresses, then you take some steps. I don't think this is going to be the case where, like we've seen players this week already say, I want to go here, I want to go there. I don't think it's going to be a case of I want to get traded, now work out the rest. It's the way you have to work backwards in some ways, get the result, and then when it gets a little bit closer,
And the player has to say, I want to stay, if he's in a slight bit of stake. Because if he says, I want to go definitely, and then comes back, particularly a club like Carlton, they tear you apart.
You revealed this story a month ago. Do you think he stays, if you had to call it right now?
I still think he stays. Yes, I do. But it doesn't mean that he's not looking and thinking, what else is out there.
That's right, yeah.
And that is, I think, quite normal for players in Charlie Curnow's position, and I understand why he's saying what he's saying publicly, but it doesn't mean it's being reflected behind the scenes. Before we move into the Dogs, just more news out of Carlton. Aaron Hamill has departed the club. You reported today that Tom Lonergan is going elsewhere as well, Carl?
Yeah, he's going to be leaving Carlton, where he's a development coach, and joining the Cats as a recruiter. They like their old premiership teammates there, obviously Andrew Mackey, James Kelly, a few there.
And Aaron Greaves as well as the assistant coach. So already big moves in the footy department, of course, in addition to Brad Lloyd. The Western Bulldogs, Hurdy, they're a club that we spoke about on Footy Furnace on Sunday night that has hugely underperformed this year. It looks like they'll miss finals, and none of us can quite work out why. Can you help us out?
Yeah, like I think to us it's obvious why. I mean, it's the ability for teams to score quickly against them. Their midfield is fantastic when it attacks, when it gets its hand on the ball, but sides are able to cut through them and get the ball out the front of stoppage. Have a look at the stoppage here. We just have a look here at how the Bulldogs get out. So Sam Davidson just trades in, just collapses in, and then you watch Hayden Young come out through the middle of the ground. We're going to look at this from a couple of angles. This happened too often on Sunday night against Freo, and why Freo were able to score really, really quickly. Just pause here. See that space there? Most teams would have a defensive winger covering that space and not enabling Hayden Young to come out. The Bulldogs decided they want all their numbers in and around the contest, which leaves that sort of alleyway out through the back. And here again, we'll pause this. Look at all the Bulldogs players have collapsed in on the contest, all in too close, and on the outside, Fremantle have got out. That, to me, Rory, talks about a team that really wants to hunt the ball. They're good when they get the ball, but when they miss the ball, it is too easy to go the other way, and that's why they're able to get scored against. And the best teams with those good midfields can really put a score on against them. The
best teams will just challenge their tackling and their defensive pressure, and that's what teams will expose. They want to run out, they want to carry, they want to break the tackles. But the other part, and it's a really easy fix, and I'm going to give you an example of the best team doing it, but is the Doggies' defensive structure. Have a look at this forward 50 stoppage, and we're going to see the numbers that are inside this stoppage. You've got every single midfielder from the Dogs inside this stoppage. If we pause here, there is 10 players ahead of the ruckman. Okay, 10 players, that only means 8 that are behind. And when Freo win this ball, and like many teams do, they can come out unpressured and come out like this, and the ball will transition down to the other. And now the best and most organised defensive team in the comp is Collingwood. That's Pendles at the bottom of the screen there. They've got 4 players ahead of the ruckman. So watch this ball. As this plays out, they're very well set up in case, one, they can score from it because they've opened up some space from the stoppage. But if they lose the ball, look whose hands it end up in. It's Pendles. He's set up perfectly, and Schultz was there as well.
So is that coaching?
And so what we're saying is that they're too attacking. We think their midfield, they're just too attacking. And I think it is part coaching, it's part players. But if you continue to attack like that, you are going to get scored against. And I think it's a bit of balance for Luke Beveridge. He spoke about more pressure around the contest, his press conference after the game. And I think you'll see next year more balance around the stoppages and around the contest, so that they actually, when they lose the ball, can't get their hands on it. It doesn't rip down the other end for a goal.
We're asking for a 2-goal change, really, aren't we? There's not much. It's 2 goals difference between some of those close games that are a win or a loss.